Okay, thanks for tuning into Stampscaping 101. This is a scene that I did in over the course of about 2 weeks. I first started stamping it out and doing the composition and running all the different types of tones on here. And you'll see in this video where I kind of screw up and I don't know, I was talking about doing some kind of example and as far as the inking process goes, and when this area up here was still white, I thought it was my blotter paper, and I did one of these, and I left a big print right in the middle there where I was going to stamp out the quote. So kind of on the fly, I just decided, okay, I'm just going to put this quote into this mat and place it over the top of there instead, which, in the end result looks better. I just wasn't going to do that because it would extend the time of this video already, and I'm already kind of a lazy stamper, even though I do these kind of elaborate scenes. When it comes to cutting out and doing all this matting and stuff like that, I usually don't do too much of that, but admittedly it looks a lot better to do that, kind of have a matted quote within this overall composition here. The scene was about or is about using these Scenic Sentiments, okay? And I talk about how different ways to approach using quotes. You can kind of read off a quote and see if it kind of triggers anything, as any kind of visuals in your head that you want to kind of put down on here. Another way to do it is to just kind of stamp out a scene, and if you have enough of these quotes, or a few of them, you can kind of read some of them and see if any of them go along with it. They don't always have to be incorporated in the scene itself. It could be, this is a large scene, it's a half page. You can do a quarter page or a smaller scene and do one of these little quotes on a separate piece of paper and put it underneath the scene or anywhere within your composition or your card format. This scene happens to use the Earth Laughs and Flowers. When I thought about that, I thought about the gel pens and going into the scene and adding a great deal of the kind of wildflower look using those gel pens within a green meadow. After I stamped out my scene, I don't know, I got busy and I didn't really get back to this, and what you'll see in this video is when I get back to finishing off this video and seeing the card, a lot of the colors kind of get real matted looking and muted, and I wouldn't say they were faded. Well, I guess they were visually faded, but they could be recaptured in terms of the vibrancy and depth and saturation of the colors with the use of a spray sealant. So you'll see at the end of this video. I'll try to timestamp this so you can fast forward to any of these spots, but you can see that this scene here is not faded out, and there's plenty of deep saturations here in terms of the tone, so that was recaptured with the spraying of the scene. So anyways, thanks again for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the making of this scene and card. Okay, this video is going to be an introduction to the Scenic Sentiment stamps. There are a lot of quotes and sayings and words that kind of go with scenic stamping. There's some sheets that are just kind of just a little, I don't know, titles or whatever, or something to kind of go along with the scene that might be appropriate if you're doing some kind of sky scene or something like that. That it has clouds. There's my heads in the clouds. Spirit of the Wild, maybe something with, I don't know, that one could go with really anything. Probably something that doesn't have any structures in it. My spirit is in the mountains, peace, so on and so forth. Some of them are quotes from various people. Nature always wears the colors of the spirit. Probably not something to go along with a monochromatic black and white, of course, but it certainly could, depending on the interpretation of someone. To the mind that is still, the whole universe surrenders. I don't know, when I read something like that, I'm seeing something of like perhaps something with deep space figures in it. Maybe some stars, a Milky Way would be really great with that. But anyways, I mean, as I read some of these earth laps and flowers, it conjures up certain types of scenery for me. And there's a couple different ways to use the sentiments. I mean, it depends on what sheets you have and how many, I guess, but you could stamp something out and look over the different words, quotes, and see if anything can kind of go with your existing scene and try to match it up that way. Or you can kind of read through some of these and see if it brings anything to mind, and to, you know, you can kind of approach a scene, you know, based around the words that you're going to use with it. You can use these word stamps with kind of individually and placed underneath a complete scene, or you can incorporate the words in the scene itself. And I thought in this scene that I do, I'm going to do it that way. So I was reading through these before I started, and I thought, I haven't used the earth laughs and flowers yet, and I thought I would do something like that. I was thinking of something in kind of a spring bloom type of a scene. I was just trying to figure out what format I would do that in. I have this long format right here, and I thought I would do something with a winter scene, but I'm going to use it as a springtime type of a scene. And as far as flowers go, I like using a lot of the pastel gel pens kind of within a grassy scene. I think that really brings the kind of a meadowy, grassy area to life with all these little different little pops of color. Looks like my boy made this into a little flag at some point in time. But anyways, let's just start off now. This is using the Bear Rubber. This is code 358I. Snowy Brook, I think. Pretty large stamp. I'm using it on the Bear acrylic with the Tack and Peel sheet. You can see it's been applied here. This is permanent right here, and the rubber just sticks to it, okay? It's not sticky, that's not like tacky adhesive or something like that. But the Tack and Peel is a pretty good one to utilize with just bare dyes. We used to use things like, before this type of thing came out, we would be typically using things like double stick tape or something like that, but this is just so much more convenient and cleaner to use. The Tack and Peel does have a slight sponginess to it, so I don't feel, I don't know, I haven't needed to use any cushion. Some people like to use cling foam cushion with their stamps. It gives it a little bit more mass, and having stamps with a little bit more of a cushioning helps to make up for irregularities within maybe a table surface if it's not completely smooth. Personally, when I'm using this type of system here, I have a pretty good thick, you know, stack of blotter paper underneath, so that provides a little bit of cushioning itself. So it's not, the cushion isn't on the stamp, it's on the, you know, it could be underneath your paper. Okay. So that being said, let's see. I'm trying to figure out which way I want to do this. I think I'm going to put this Brook at a slight angle too. Okay, so it would be like this. I'm tilting it a little bit like this. Okay. Let's go about like that. Use plenty of pressure across the surface of your block so you get complete coverage. Okay. So you have this little thing coming through here. There's snow on there too, but I can easily turn that into moss. Or maybe I have kind of a little bit of the residual snow on there and kind of patches of grass here and there. I don't know, maybe I'll do something like that. I don't know. We'll figure it out. Okay. Let's see now. Now we have a lot of area to fill in around this. And remember, I am going to use this quote in here, so I don't want to have everything completely filled in here with busy texture, okay? Because I'm going to want to stamp that in there somewhere, and I want it to show, because when you stamp something like a quote in a scene, it becomes somewhat of the focal point, just like stamping a little figure or animal tends to do, okay? So, I think I'm going to build a slope here. Okay, so it's going to be a slope, and I think I'm going to have a little bit of area of sky that's not too busy, and I think that's going to leave ample room for that quote there, okay? Alright, so this is the Sedge filler stamp, okay? And I'm just building that up like so. Where that goes, it's the end of the meadow, and the area up here is going to end up being the sky. Okay. Alright. With this grassy texture, you can change the angle of it. I mean, I could be stamping this in all green or something like that if I wanted to as well, just for some variation, but I think I'm going to stick with the black here, just to kind of speed things along. And I'll utilize all of my color application to introduce the color into the scene. Okay. Alright, so we've built a little bit of a slope right here. We have our stream running through there. I kind of tilted that stream just to kind of, give a, a visual movement to the scene. Sometimes it makes it a little bit more dynamic. Okay. Now, Earth laughs in flowers. I'm going to have some flowers in here, so I have this tree here, and you can say, well, there's no flowers on that, but sometimes these trees that go dormant, these deciduous trees will, what do they do first? They bloom, kind of in the spring before the leaves come on. So I think this would give, provide a nice opportunity for some additional color on there. I don't know, maybe it's I can put little blooms on there like a cherry blossom or something like that. But looking at this, and I'm thinking right now in my mind, I'm going to be putting in a ton of green into here. I think I'm going to wait to stamp this out, just so I don't stamp it out in black, and then when I start coloring over it, I don't want to, take some time for this to dry, so I don't want this to smear. So I'm just going to hold off until the end to do that one. Okay, but let's see, here's some other trees. I was trying to think of a good composition for this. And I don't know, I'm trying to think now. I don't know if I want these trees in here or not. I could do kind of a smaller version of them. Maybe let's do that. We'll compromise a little bit. Okay, let's see here. Think of some colors to stamp this in. Here's black. But maybe I don't want it to be all black, so why don't I bring some... This is a dark brown. This is a dark brown Marvy pen. It's the number 18 pen. Let's see. Let's bring some of that brown into it. I'm bringing it into the trunks. I don't even know if I'm going to stamp the bottom half of this tree or not. Well, let's just apply some of that ink on there. Now, as I'm kind of doing this, I'm kind of rolling off some of the black that lifts off the off those trees. And let me see. Let's try to introduce some green into that. Oh, this green is really dry. Now, one of the nice things about these pens here is that they match the pad, so this number 4 green, I guess that's why they call them RV matchables, because they match the pens. I could, anything that comes in pad form, there's a re-inker for, so when I have a chance, I'll re-ink this number 4 pen with the number 4 pad re-inker. You just kind of pop off the back of that. Let's see if I can get this out. What you do is you just put ink down here. I have a specific video for that, but for those who haven't seen that, that's where you would add the re-inking fluid to reinvigorate your pens. Okay, there's some green on there. I don't want this to be this green. I want this to be kind of blended in there, just to kind of give it a greenish tinge for my scene. Okay. Alright. Now, I'm taking a ripped paper towel. You can see I've used this before on something, probably on another video. But I'm just going to place this somewhere. I don't want to use this straight edge. That's why I ripped it like this, so it gives it a little bit of an irregular line. And stamp it on down. So this is kind of, in a sense, it's like a selective dissection of the stamp. Here we go. Let's see. Can you see that? Oh, let me see. That's the variation right there. There's a little bit of brown and really dark green, but see, it kind of blends in a little bit. Okay. Alright, now there's already some ink on here, so I don't need to use quite as much ink this time around. But let's ink it up in a similar fashion. I'm putting the green at the top there, and I don't know, if I want to, I can try some of this lighter green on the top. Like that. Okay, and let's go with some more trees. How about down here? Something like that. Okay. Maybe we'll go a little bit higher. Okay. And what do you think? Maybe kind of balance it out with some more trees on this side. Okay, let me go with one more impression of that. Sometimes they say to do things in threes, you know, compositionally, or odd numbers, I guess, for kind of a visual composition purposes. Okay, I might use this one a little bit more to make it look like it's, if they're bigger, if I use a larger percentage of it, sometimes it looks like it's closer to you. Also, it depends on how far you stamp it down. If you stamp it down higher in the composition, it's going to represent something that's farther back. And if you stamp it lower, it represents something that's closer to you, right? Okay. Let's see, let's go around. Okay, something like that. I might have some of the trunks showing in this one, I'm not quite sure. Okay, that looks pretty good. Um, let's go for a little bit of variation now. Let's add in some of these trees. For some reason I can't think of the name of these trees, and I've been using them for 20 years. But I think it's 068B as far as the code goes. Okay. Doing the same thing, you know, just kind of using my ripped edge here. Now, do you know why I'm masking this off? If I just took this whole thing and just stamped it right here, okay, which you can do in some instances, but in this scene where there's a lot of grass, if I stamp this out with those trunks just straight across right like that, it would say that these trees are, you know, sitting on something that's really not very dense. But if you do it where you're masking off kind of the bottom like that, what you're saying is that, you know, there's thick grass down there and at the base of these trees, you know, and you can't see them. You can't see the full trunk just going into the dirt or soil. Okay, let's see. As I do this, it occurs to me that maybe I'll do a larger pine for the foreground too. I don't know. Figure it out. Okay. Now I have all these pines in there. I'm thinking, do I want to use this? I'm not really sure. Now I have this one right here. This is called Spiny Branches. Maybe I'll do something with that. You know, I think I like this better because it matches those little spiny branches alongside the brook there. Now, here's the question. Do I want to stamp this now or do I do this later? Let's do that later. Alright. You know what I didn't do? I didn't clean off my stylus. Well, it looks like I have a couple tips. I was going to stop the video and clean these things off, but it looks like I have some clean tips around here, so. Alright. Let's pick out some colors. Okay. These videos are really not in sequence or something like that if, you know, if there's ever been any question about that. But in the previous video, I go into color schemes, and I do go into my greens, you know, because I mean, in Scenic Stamping, inevitably, probably someone's going to be doing something in green to represent, you know, grass or something like that, you know, in a daytime scene. But what I did in that video is I went into kind of the lineup as far as the progression of value and hue through something that would represent a grassy area. We mixed and matched, but I always start off my scenes with light shades. I don't know, not always, I guess, you know, but usually in this type of scene I would. I mean, there are some monochromatics where I'll just go in with a dark gray or something like that sort, but for the most part, I don't know, in a large percentage of scenes, I start off light. I like to establish, I know this isn't green, but I like to use browns, kind of earthy tones in a scene, in addition to, you know, the typical notion of grass and the hue that that would entail, which would be just greens or something like that. I don't know. Grassy fields are often brown too, but I don't know. I think people's notions of grass are just typically green. But anyway, starting off light, going back to that, allows me to get a base coat of color down. Okay, now I'm starting off with the Adirondack Lights, and this is Peach Bellini. I don't know, yellow would look good too, you know, because yellow and blues mix to form green, so it's not a color that's unrelated to grass. But the light colors allows you to go in and establish kind of a saturation, a level of saturation that you'll use on the scene, but it allows you to go in, for me, primarily, it's to kind of establish somewhat of a lighting scheme for the scene, okay? What's going to be light and what's going to be dark, but I mean, it's a very, 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 you know, light, I don't know, light commitment to that, that color, that lighting scheme, okay? I'm deciding on certain areas of the scene that I want to remain light by just simply not going over it with this color, okay? Now, a lot of times I don't want it to just be pure white, you know, sometimes that's too stark, you know, at the end of the scene, but for the most part, you know, you can kind of see certain areas lighter than others, and those are the areas that you don't want to go in and coat too much with incrementally darker tones to follow. Okay, so I'm going to be using different colors of green. Now I'm going to start off with a very light green, and if it goes into those lighter areas, then so be it. But, you know, especially when I get down to the medium tones, the darker tones, I kind of want to avoid certain areas. Okay, now that's another area that sometimes people have a hard time with. They not experienced stampers once you get to, you know, this technique down, but sometimes, you know, the comment is they have a hard time retaining some of the lightness of their card, the white of the paper, or at least lighter areas of the paper. And it's just simply because they add the same amount of ink with the medium and darker tones as they do with these, you know, initial colors. Okay, the initial colors get a lot of, you know, they get a lot of coverage because you have to use these as a base coat for the other colors to come. Now, where you retain that lightness is just by not going over them, okay? But we're getting to that. Okay, let's see. Let's move through these other values right here. I think that one goes probably like this or so. If you can't tell what comes next in terms of value by looking at, you know, the color coding, you know, which one's darker, that, I don't know. If you can't tell, then it typically doesn't matter. But I can certainly tell that this is lighter than this, right? But if it's real close visually, you know, in terms of the color-coded stickers, or in the Marvy case, the pads, then, you know, you can use either one. It's not going to be a big deal. And that being said, you know, when you're inking your scenes, don't be afraid if you get to a certain point in the toning process, if you decide, you know, something looks a little anemic to me in this certain area, there's not enough ink applied, don't just go with the darker ink and ink it in. Go back to your lighter tones, because it typically means that, you know, you didn't get enough of a saturation using a certain ink color. So don't be afraid to just go right over the top of a scene and add lighter tones, and in many cases, like this yellow-green right here, it's a super bright tone, alright? So the brighter tones typically kind of establish, you know, how rich and deep and vibrant a certain area is going to be. The darker tones, can be very bright, vibrant as well. But typically, I use those ones for not so much for intensity of a given area, but I use it more for the value of a certain area, meaning light and shade, dark and light. Okay, intensity has to do with dull, dull and vibrant, the relative brightness of a given hue. All right, I think I'm getting kind of complicated right here, but I don't know. I was confusing myself. I don't know, not really, but okay. You can kind of see the lighting scheme kind of getting established. Now, this is light down here because I'm thinking about using, I don't know, maybe some blues through that, like a little brook or something like that going off into the distance, okay? So I'm not necessarily bringing the greens into that area, though that area will, I'll address that with its own color scheme. Okay, very bright, very light, getting darker though. Number 11 green is very, very bright, alright? Left alone, for me, personally, it's too bright, but I know that I'm going to use other colors over the top of it, so I don't need to worry about it being so visually intense of a color. Okay, but I do like using it. It's just going to be somewhat buried under a lot of other colors to come by the time I'm finished here. This is the light green Marvy. There's a lot of other companies that have, of course, the yellow-green, very bright color. It's a pretty basic color for someone's repertoire. Alright, let's see. Adding that in. Okay, let's add some more around here. Okay. Let's try the jungle green. Okay, getting pretty dark. Alright, now I'm moving into these darker tones, okay? It's spreading very easy for me because of the seashell inks that were laid down as a base. Memento inks are also very thick and work well as a base coat. The Memento inks, I need to take a look at their lineup of colors that they offer, but I need to see if some of those are fairly light. If you start off with the Mementos, like I said, they move around really nice, but they're just not as, the initial ones that they had weren't quite as light as, well, I don't know, nothing's really quite as light in terms of a line as shadow stamping pads are, which the Adirondacks are. But going back to that previous video, some people have asked me if things like Distress inks or Mementos are good as a base coat, and they are. They're thick inks, and they spread very nicely on certain types of paper. I use glossy cardstock. I like how the impressions come out, with a lot of smooth surface area. Okay, so these stamps are typically very detailed, so the thicker the, not thicker, but the smoother the paper, the more contact that stamp is having with the paper, in terms of, for getting really detailed impressions. Now this is not to say that matte coat papers don't work well in scenic stamping. Some people use only matte paper because they don't like the look of the glossy. They want more of a softer look, pastels or something like that, or their favorite medium might be things like colored pencils, pastels, chalks, typically soft media. Okay, and those over the years have been some of my favorite scenes that people have done. I don't know, there's some people that really are great at watercolors too, and they bring that into their work, and those are really fantastic. I haven't seen enough colored pencil though in recent years for some reason. A lot of times back in the mid-90s, there was a lot of people using colored pencil in their scenic stamping. That looked really great. I need to try that out myself and get some practice time in there with both colored pencil and watercolor pencils. Okay, I'm getting somewhere now. I think this jungle green, I'm really starting to get some dimension in here. I added some darker tones right down at the base of the trees. Okay, so the trees are kind of, they've been given more mass, okay, by placing some of this darker tone right at the base of them. And mass, I guess, because they feel like they're anchored now into the scene. But what I'm also giving them is what? I mean, if they're casting a shadow, then what you're doing is you're giving them opacity. You know, they're affecting the light around them, and that's really effective in scenic stamping. To have your objects affecting the light. Okay, so you just add a little bit of tone underneath it, and that can make a big difference. Going back to your ripped paper towel technique, I mean, a lot of people use this for skies and for brayering, but you can certainly use this on other areas of your scene, okay? By doing something like this, you see how this kind of ripped edge kind of contours nicely with some of the grassy areas. Alright, so I can go in like this, ink up, and dab in like so, so that you're just not subject to, to just pure freeform applications of, the stylus tool. In other words, I'm not just going like this and, having to angle and move this around. I can get a different edge, with this paper towel here. Okay. So leaving that down, let's go to some of this memento. This memento looks to be, oops. I just added that on my paper as opposed to the background. My sky is going to be green now. So anyway, a video instructional mishap, but who cares, right? We'll make an emerald sky as opposed to a blue sky. Okay. A little bit of a change in hue. Okay. Right in there. Same thing in the background, adding some variation. Okay, let's see. Okay. A little bit of, well, let's go here too. I was going to say a little bit of variation here and there. But as I pull this off, that to me looks a little bit awkward. That looks really awkward, but what I do is after I do that, I go back in now and I blend this in a little bit more, going back to that freeform application, okay? If you need to. And what I've done is I've gone back to the jungle green. Jungle green is slightly lighter in value than the Memento Cottage Ivy. Okay. Now, as I like to do, let's go to that Cottage Ivy now and hit a couple of those shadow areas to make them a little bit darker. But now, right at the base here, where these shadows are, I'm not going to spread out this darker green quite as far as I did with the jungle green, okay? I'm kind of cracking up in my head now as I do this, you know, with that little thing there. I'm trying to think of how I'm going to resolve that. I'll probably put a cloud in there now, but I still have to have room for that Earth Laughs and Flowers somewhere. Okay, anyways, don't look at that. There's my meadow, kind of, okay? That's with the greens now. Now let's kind of go in there. It's kind of looking pretty earthy to me. I don't think I need a lot of this brown in here, but let's give it a try. And also, let's give a try to some of these. Oh, let's see. Here's a distressing. These distressings have really great crystalline looking earth tones, brown. Of course, they're supposed to look aged, and that might work really well. This is the antique linen. Let me make sure I didn't mix and match my lids. Okay, that's really light, right? So I think that will work very well in here. I'm adding this in a very light area because that's the area where I stand to kind of see it the most. You know, when I do it over the green areas, I don't know if I'll be able to tell quite as much, and I do. I can tell the difference right there. It's kind of knocking down the intensity of some of these green areas. Let's kind of bring some of this into this area here. Alright, now this antique linen is very dark, light. So, I need to go back in with a darker brown if I want to affect the shadows a little bit more, because that is so light, you're really not going to be able to tell what's going on in the darker areas at all. So that was really good as a base layer over the greens, in especially the lighter areas. Okay, so let's go in now with this dark, well, this is a medium brown, but as I add it in here over the certain areas, it's going to get darker, okay, because this brown over green kind of darkens that out quite a bit. But see this right here? Let's see if I can. It's getting dark. I don't know. Here we go. Sorry about that. I don't know why this automatic exposure tends to get dark over the course of time as I'm filming. Okay, but anyways, you can see that brown down there, how that really pops out. It really warms up that little area. It looks strange when you just have it in one area, so you kind of have to bring it around into other areas. Okay. Brown is warm. It's a warm tone. It's a warm hue, so it's kind of adding a little bit of a golden look to the scene without going into something like an ochre or something like that, you know. It just adds in just kind of that element of, you know, an orangish tone or value, which I like. Okay. Now, let's see. Let's go on. I think it's time to kind of address the water area. Let's go and bring in some hue into that area. This is a Memento blue, and it's called Summer Sky. Alright, now I'm applying this into that watery area. It's very, very light and workable. It's not soaking into my page so fast that I can't blend it around. Okay, it's going into that whole area. I don't want it to be overly blue down there, but this is, like I said, this is a very light tone. Okay, now let's see. Let's go on with the Salvia blue. Okay, Salvia blue is a little bit, that's the Marvy Salvia blue. It's slightly darker. I'm not quite sure if this is either darker or the pad is just really a lot juicier than that particular Memento one. I probably re-inked this Marvy at some point in time fairly recently. Okay, blue's down there. This gets pretty tight in here, in this little area. I might use pens to get in there, the alcohol pens, you know, to get some of that real detailed area. This is the number 10 blue from Marvy. It's called light blue. Okay, now instead of just inking up this whole area, I'm just dabbing it here and there, kind of using the tip of this brush like that. Okay, I don't want it over everything. Okay, now I'm going to have some of that blue of the water kind of reflecting on some of these rocks, and I'm going to bring some of this blue into the grass. Kind of blue is related to green, of course. Just simply adding yellow to it. Blue makes blue green. Okay. Now, let me see. I need my cloud stamp. I'm gonna pause this and go grab that. Okay, we're back. This is the Cloud Cumulus stamp. Kind of a great filler cloud for whatever purpose. In this case, I have that big thing there, and if this doesn't kind of eradicate that, then I'm just going to cut that out there and put a different piece of paper in there or something, or I'm going to put that Earth Laughs and Flowers over the top of it in a different kind of stamped and matted frame. Alright, let's go with this same blue that I just used in here. It's the number 10 light blue, Marvy matchable. On the cloud stamp, I'm going to use several impressions, so sometimes I kind of mop off the perimeter like that before I stamp it out. Okay, now I've prepared a little mat here. I'm going to put that right over the top, okay? And let's see. I'll still see that thing until I bring some color into it, but let's just start off with this right now. Okay, get good solid pressure. Okay. And let's come in with another one. Let's put it over here. Let's see, let's go about like so. Okay, so you kind of overlap and you change the angle of your cloud. Okay. Filling in this other area down here. Alright. Bring your mat over here. I'm kind of under masking a little bit. I want some of that slopey hill to be showing, okay, when I do this. I don't want to put this too high up here, because then when I stamp this out, it's going to leave this big space in between. Alright. Okay. That really filled in that area. I'll see what happens here. Okay. Let's work through the same color scheme as I did with the little water area. I'm going to go on with my ocean aqua, though, for the sky. Okay. Okay, now, I want certain areas to kind of darken up, but I want some of these clouds to remain nice and light. Okay, so certain areas I kind of make darker. Like that right there seems like it would be an appropriate place to kind of remain light. Alright, so darkening up the area around it, maybe that area will kind of pop out. Okay, that's that color. Let's move on to the that juicy salvia blue pad. Okay. Going to the light blue, the same color that I stamped those clouds in. Let's see here. This is a number 3 blue. Okay, now I'm getting pretty dark here, so I have to be careful about that. I don't want to overuse it. I don't want a bunch of, these little pad-shaped shapes in here. So you see how I'm kind of working it, and I'm kind of moving that around. I'm not stamping it too sparse like that. are too, separated. Alright, I'm kind of staying in one little area like this, and I'm kind of blending that out. Now I'm blending it out on kind of a wet piece of paper, so it's easier to do it on the glossy cardstock that has a base coat of, several of the blues on there right now. Okay. Now that was a pretty dark color that I did that shape with, so I have to go pretty dark to kind of cover it up. I know the quote was, Earth laughs and flowers, right? This is kind of a humorous kind of a save here, having to do that. I don't know why I did that. I guess it was so light up there, I thought it was a piece of the paper or something like that, so I didn't even, well, I wasn't thinking. I just kind of stamped that, blotted that color out right in that, right on my card. Okay, just incorporating this color in with the scene. Here's this blue, kind of going in the four corners right here, and that kind of frames the scene off a little bit. It doesn't necessarily read, as a dark blue. It's just kind of a darker edge like that, okay? And like I said, in many videos, just kind of going a little bit darker in your corners can really make a big difference in terms of the composition and the feel of it. When you kind of frame things off, they call that in photography, if you apply this filter, they call it like a vignette, okay? And it just kind of contains the composition or the photograph or the subject matter, and kind of brings it holds the viewer's attention within the composition, as opposed to looking at, some kind of scene and feeling like there's something missing, This is just one little snapshot of a greater overall, where something might be missing. I mean, you might want to, to stamp out a scene and for someone to think, I wonder what's over here, if that scene continued, but for the most part it's like just saying that, this is a world unto itself, it's complete, and, it doesn't need for anything else, like something similar to like a stage design. It's, artwork is where, you're kind of creating, your own little, whatever, universe within a, the given frame. Okay, now that green is showing up to me still, so what I'm going to do is not go in with that same green, but I'm going to warm that sky up a little bit with another lighter green. This is pale green right here. Okay, actually that looks pretty good. It's kind of, by adding a little bit of warmth like that, it's kind of making that area glow. That quote, that saying, is not going to show up on here at all anymore, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it out and matte it in some kind of colors that make sense for this scene, and I'm going to put it right over the front of it somewhere. I don't know, I guess it gives me a little bit more flexibility in terms of what I do with it, and I guess that'll be good. I was just going to stamp it into the scene because I was feeling, I just wanted to do the scene. I was kind of lazy about that. So when I stamp it right in there, I don't have to kind of frame it off and stamp it on something else. But it does look good when people do that, so I'll do it here. I don't know, I'm forced to. Okay. Add a little bit more of that. Okay, adding some of that over that darker area of the sky. Actually, that doesn't look too bad, actually, We have this kind of lighter slope up here. And compositionally, it kind of matches that lighter area as well. So you have dark, light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And a couple little patches of light in there. So we're kind of oscillating the lighting within a scheme, given composition. And that kind of adds to kind of more of a visual richness, when you do that, rather than having just everything, like this whole bank of, grass, the same uniform value, okay? So kind of leave certain areas just lighter. So in other words, just when you start applying some tones, just apply less, than you might in the end result. If you have too much light area and it looks kind of strange, then maybe fill some of it in with some lighter tones, go back into it and build up some colors through there. Okay. Let's add some foreground into the scene. Let's see here. This is the spiny branches. And I'm going to do that in black because I'm going to be stamping it over some pretty dark greens in there. So it has to stand out. Alright. Let's see, I'll add some of it right over here. What this is doing is it's, when you add large things in the foreground, what you're doing is you're kind of increasing the spatial depth of field. You're now saying, okay, now there's something very close to you that's in focus. So you have spatially, you're really increasing things, from a compositional perspective. And it kind of puts you, when you do like larger things in the foreground, for the viewers of the scene, it's kind of putting them into the scene. And I think that kind of makes things a little bit more intimate, by having the viewer in there. I mean, I do it on most of my scenes, having something very close. I mean, I can see, where you might not do that in some scenes if you want it to look more of like this majestic grandeur, where you're looking off in the distance. But even on things like with deep space or something like that, I have to put a tree or something like that, like someone's looking up into it, even if it's like a nebula or something like that that you really couldn't see with a naked eye. I like to add those in there. Okay, and you can just use certain, imagery, very small little parts of it. Okay, so I just use those little tips right there over there. So it doesn't have to be the whole thing used, in its complete form. Okay, now let's see. I'm trying to decide now if I want to add in those wildflowers now, and I think I'm going to, or if I wanted to add in some other elements, highlights or something like that. I'll tell you what, let's try this first. Alright, now this is where I always kind of mess up here when I'm doing these videos. I always zoom in and I forget kind of what areas kind of off the scene or out of the camera's view. I'll try to remember that this time. Okay, this is green, and I'm trying to just see. I have to kind of decide if this is going to show up at all. The value of this green is almost the same as that dark green, so that I'm not really getting anything showing. So this pen, for me, is somewhat useless. Okay, as far as the scene goes. Let's switch up. Let's go to an orange or white. Let me try this white one. Okay, well, the white one's really going to show up, or it should. Okay. Let me make sure that I'm staying within the frame of the video. Okay. Some of these rocks here, actually, it's really snow, but I want to go back in and reintroduce those shapes into this area that I just kind of colored out, but really couldn't avoid when coloring with the stylus tool. The stylus tool is a small sponge, but you know, when you're talking about a really small area, it's still large in relation to those little areas. Like those little rocks down there, I can't really, you know, take this big sponge and go and color around them, right? Oh yeah, I was going to use some of the alcohol-based pens too. I'll do that. I'll add in some real detailed shading areas, or shaded areas. Okay, going in here, adding a little bit of texture. Sometimes I like to go around the, right on the banks of a little stream or river. Okay, so see that water in there? There's certain little rocks and areas on the stamp itself, and I've just kind of gone in and re-established those little white areas right there. Well, those are on the stamp itself, but I've just gone in, colored it back in like that. Okay, and this little ridge here, I want to bring that out a little bit more. This white isn't standing out too much in that area because the area is fairly light. Okay, so right now, like I said, I'm using this mostly for little highlights. Okay, now if I use this out in the meadow area, like around here, okay, it starts to stand out more. You know, if you have a little white dot in a dark area, it stands out. And what that could represent in those areas is something maybe that might be like little white wildflowers of some sort. And I like to cluster these when I do it. I don't just space everything out, you know, completely even. So kind of group them like so. When I'm adding in really tight little details like this, I always kind of be sure I kind of look up from it periodically. Otherwise you tend to get focused in on really tiny little areas, and you don't want to lose kind of a sense of the overall, you know, how it's kind of, these little dots are affecting kind of the overall scene. You kind of have to hold it out at arm's distance once in a while and take a look. Okay, here's some little, those little dots down there. See how they're clustered right across there. And I haven't done it down there yet, but you hold it out at arm's distance. Okay, and it just becomes kind of a little bit more of a pattern throughout the scene. And it relates. If you do one cluster here and not anywhere else, it looks strange. It looks like texture that's kind of, you know, out of place. So if you start adding this in there, don't be alarmed, you know, if it's really standing out too strong. Just kind of repeat the pattern here and there, and it should come all come together for you. Now remember, I'm not doing this over a super dark area. I mean, I could, but for the most part, I'm laying this down in some of the lighter areas, and where the lighter areas transition into medium areas. But, you know, just my thoughts on that is that, you know, if there's an area that's really super dark in a scene, then there's probably not enough light shining in there to reflect, you know, whatever light areas it would be in there. In this case, these are supposed to represent flowers, so if an area is completely in shade, then maybe we wouldn't be able to see, you know, the white nature of these flowers. Okay, now that going back to that quote, Earth laughs in flowers. I mean, it doesn't look like Earth is laughing in flowers right here to me. So let's get into some brighter colors, some colors that will really stand out in here, okay? Like there's going to be an explosion of wildflowers. I was just driving through Death Valley National Park. Was it last week? Was it only a week ago? And boy, up at about 3,000 feet in this one area, there was just an absolute explosion of wildflowers everywhere. I've never seen that dense of an area of just so many different varieties of wildflowers, which I wasn't expecting because I didn't think there was enough rain this year for that, but it was truly spectacular, and just color everywhere, and dense too. And it went on for several miles. You usually see patches of it here and there, but I don't know, that's an area I'm going to have to return to one of these days. And, you know, I didn't take too many pictures of it, but I, you know, took a couple. But anyways, there was orange and pink and a lot of red out there. You see this color right here? That's right in there. Okay. And, okay, now here's a little detail here. Maybe in the areas that are closer to me, meaning lower in the composition, maybe around these foreground branches, I'm kind of going for a larger gel dot. Okay, maybe that represents, you know, some flowers that are closer to me. Okay. Alright. Okay. So right down there. See now the area, this whole area is kind of coming alive now. If you've never tried a gel pen before in your scenic stamping, I highly recommend it. I use it in a lot of scenes, but I don't know if I've really talked about how important I feel these are, or these can be. In many cases, I feel that without them, without the pen, this particular mark, I feel like some of the scenes are, they're just lacking that little something. Now, in a case like this, where I have so many different greens, sometimes like it feels like it gets a little bit muddy. Not in terms of the hue, but in terms of just the lack of textural variety. Everything gets a little bit soft, in other words. You know, just from the sheer amount of tones that are laid down, okay? But that's fine as is. But I think going back into the scene with a crisp little dot, in this case, I don't know, maybe it's going to be 500 of these little dots. I don't know if I would add that many, you know, if I wasn't doing that sane, but just for the sake of that sane, Earth Laughs and Flowers, I'm really going pretty extreme here. But these little gel pen dots can really bring everything back to life and expand that textural range, because, you know, when you do a little dot like that, it's a little crisp little point of color, but what it also represents, you know, when we're doing, you know, working on just a white piece of paper, it kind of represents light. So it represents this light that's shining, supposedly shining on that little flower, and it's reflecting back up at you. Okay? Because we're not really working with light, we're working with contrast. So little things like this really contrast very nicely. The pens that I've come to use over the years, I don't know, maybe all gel pens these days are pretty good, but the Uniball Signo pens are really great in terms of longevity. I haven't had any, at least, that have really clogged up on me. Alright, no, I'm sure they might in some cases, but you know, I've been using these for a long, long time, or the brand in general, and I think, for the most part, I can use these until just the ink runs out. Sometimes with some of their brands, I don't know, they didn't work brand new even, you know, which is kind of frustrating. The Signos just are really great for that. Okay, so that was the orange. You see all those little dots of orange everywhere? See, here it is right here. But they're really kind of big. I guess these would represent something akin to maybe poppies or something like that. So anyways, actually I like these bigger ones in here too. I usually don't do that. I usually do this little dot, but doing this bigger one, it seems like it's kind of nice. See, on these videos I can add, as you know, a lot of these little flourishes like this to my, you know, as many as I kind of desire. But if you're doing like a demonstration and in front of a bunch of people, you know, standing there and watching like 1,000 little dots being applied to, you know, a quarter-page card or something like that is not exactly, you know, kind of a, doesn't make for a very dynamic presentation. But I do love putting these down, and you know, if you've ever seen me demonstrate or something like that at a show, you know, I probably only added down a tenth of what I would probably like to do, you know, when it comes to these little flourishes. Okay, so that was orange and white. Now, what I was saying, in a video like this, I can do this because, you know, first of all, no one has to watch this or something like that, and you can always fast forward to the next scene or whatever, but, you know, if people want to see other techniques at a show, you know, you kind of have to just get right into it. Okay, now this is pink right here, but as I'm finding that as I lay this down here, it looks more like red to me for one reason or another. See right there and there. Okay. I think it's because this pink here is not quite as opaque. See? Yeah, it's a Uniball Signo. It's not quite as opaque as a couple of the other colors. Okay, reds, and let's try purple. It always seems, I don't know, there's something in nature, a lot of times I see the similar patterns, you know, in terms of color out there, like groupings, or the way certain colors kind of harmonize with each other in nature. One of my favorite plants is this little red ball cactus. It has this kind of plasticky look to leaves. Kind of like a, I don't know what type of red it is, but then the texture of that cactus and color is real similar to this other plant called the snow plant. I don't know if that's like a nickname for that plant or if that's the real name, but they're real similar. They have really similar consistency. But I say that because I, you know, some of these colors that I'm working in right here I've seen out there in nature. Then you see it kind of repeated sometimes, you know, like the purple and the orange or something like that. Okay. Okay. Now, can anyone spot the purple? It's like here and here. See how textural these little dots can, you know, can do to a certain area. Here it is in here, down here. Maybe I could do it somewhere in there. Let me see. This area down here got pretty, you know, like I said that earlier, it kind of got a little muddy, so with tone, and area's kind of soft, so let's see. There it is down there, and right over in here. Okay. Kind of a crazy looking meadow, huh? That stream going through there. Let's try something now. This is a Lake Plume permanent alcohol-based pen. Okay, similar to Copics. I'm just going with a very, very light blue right now to start off. You see that pattern with me? I kind of always start light. I want to see what it looks like down there, and then what I do is, you know, if it's just too light, I can always go darker, but I always think that's a better process, a better way to go than just start dark and maybe get a, you know, an unintentional mark that you don't want. So just kind of build it up, and you can always go darker if you need to. I don't know what colors these are, by the way. I was trying to see if there's even a color. Oh, aquamarine. I've always been looking on the barrel color. I guess there's like a number on there too, GB693. But it's basically just light, you know. Okay, let's see. Here's kind of a purplish blue. Adding some of this into the shadows of the rocks, maybe. Maybe right along where the bank hits the water. Kind of going back into there. Get a little variation. Okay. This is my white again. And I just want to add a little bit more of that white back into there, just for some texture. Okay. It was looking a little bit dark to me. So, I'm not covering up everything, I'm just kind of going back in and adding these little touches here and there. A lot of little points of light. Sharp light. That's what it kind of represents, at least. Okay. Let's go in. Okay, there I was zoomed in. I hope I didn't just do all that outside of the field of view. Let's go on with some pigment ink into here. Okay. Let's add some softer edges. Okay. Put on your pigment ink on your cotton swab, mat it down a little bit, get it kind of spread around a little bit. And what this smashing down does is it's kind of fraying the tip a little bit. And it gives you the soft applicator, okay? This is another thing that I think really kind of adds to a scene. I love texture, for one, so this is a way to go back and introduce into stamping a softer texture which expands on the textural range of a card. And when we talk about these things, you know, we're talking about texture. Dark and light, you know, would be kind of a range of values, okay? And certain areas, like in shadows, where they get darker and lighter, it's an opportunity to add that in. We talked about intensity a little bit. Some areas, like the grass, you know, I wanted it to be nice and bright, but not quite as hot. You know, I want it rich and deep. But that talks about the intensity range of something. Sometimes something's so intense, like green or something like that, we don't want something like fluorescent showing up, you know what I mean? That's totally distracting. So what we do is we knock it down a little bit. So we're knocking down the intensity, so we have value, light and dark, intensity, dull, and bright. And when it comes to objects, you know, this stamping, for the most part, things are very crisp. We want crisp impressions. You know, we don't want to stamp out a stamp and it's kind of blobby or something like that. We want a crisp, nice crisp impression of it. But a lot of times inherently, images are not going to be soft, okay? So this is just a way to kind of go back in and introduce that in just a really simple method right here. like these trees down here, okay, they're nice and sharp as they go down into the grass, but if I go in and put down a little bit of this pigment ink right at the base of it, like so, it does two things. It kind of introduces that element of fog into the scene, but it does, in doing so, it softens up that area, so we have part of that tree that's soft, and part of the tree is crisp. So you're making kind of a textural statement right in that little space, and it's just by adding a thin layer of pigment ink over it. It's such a easy thing to do. You want the consistency on this Q-tip to not be so much ink. Now, you have to kind of gauge how much ink's in your pad. If you're using a pad that's really wet, you know, like a brand new pigment ink pad or something like that, then you're going to want to be careful about the application of that ink. Okay, you want to blot a lot of it out, or just don't ink up your applicator too much. Okay, so you see what's going on right here? See that atmosphere in there, that mist? Okay, it's kind of adding to the look or the feel of the scene, right? When you do that, when you make kind of people aware of the kind of the space in between the objects, as I've said before in previous videos, it kind of creates mood, like a sunset, you know, when all that moisture and dust in the air is illuminated with golden light. You can see it, you know, more so than when you can see, you know, see it like during, you know, high noon when the light is just like bright white. But when the light is like really golden, I mean, people really love that time of day. People love sunsets and sunrises, okay, because of the colors of the sky, but also because a lot of things around them start turning that color. It's because, you know, all that dust and moisture in the air become illuminated with that color of light. And that's why, you know, a lot of photographers, you know, they shoot in that golden hour. You know, it's when we're aware of all that light. Or they like shooting kind of real moody things, like a real foggy kind of afternoon where a lot of the objects are muted. You know, there's a lot of mood to it, right? You know, it's when we're aware of kind of the, whatever the weather, I guess. Alright, let's see. Now this is another thing that looks really funny if you don't kind of apply it over a, you know, more than one area. If you just kind of put one little thing of fog somewhere, it kind of looks strange. So you're gonna have to bring it around, you know, here and there within a scene, and it'll kind of make sense in terms of the continuity. I have no idea what time it is right now, but this scene has gone on for a longer period of time than I anticipated. Sometimes I apologize about the running time of these videos, and some people say, "Oh, hey, it's not too long, you know, just keep them as is." But you know, a scene like this, I'm wondering if you still feel that way. Okay, this is a perfect answer to this rocky area. For me, the scene wasn't matching particularly as well as I would have wanted, you know, in terms of this stream and the areas around it, but by putting some of this texture over the top of it, which is also on these other areas, I think it's really starting to kind of harmonize and blend in with the rest of the scene. Okay, I know around water is a really great place for mist, you know, to rise off the surface and to diffuse kind of the objects around it. And as I was doing that, I completely forgot about this little branch right here. I was going to put in some little blossoms onto it. Let's see if I can. Let's see if I can get it with this. Here's a red. I don't want a red. Let's go with this pink right here. Let's put on some little blossoms onto this craggy branch. It's not really showing up in some areas. I have an idea though. I'm going to do white like that and kind of mix it with the red. Okay, as I'm doing this, it occurs to me to do it just like I did in the grass. I'm going to cluster these little dots, not over every part of the branch, but just here and there. And I think that one actually looks better. This white kind of mixed with some of that red, physically mixed with it, and it kind of became a little bit of a pink, like a little cherry blossom, which is kind of nice. Okay, and you see what I mean right here? Okay, so that down there. Kind of wanted to do this scene too. I'm filming this now in April, and the year is 2014, and I don't know, I was talking with somebody not too long ago, a week ago or something like that, and they're just, certain areas are just having like a heck of a winter in terms of, you know, a lot more snow and cold temperatures than they've had in recent years. So I wanted to do something with nice bright tones and kind of spring-like colors and kind of a spirit. Okay, so that kind of brought out that area slightly down there. See that branch right there? I mean, I'm showing this as a real close-up, but you kind of look at this as a whole, though. Alright. I don't think that... It doesn't look so busy, you know, when you look at it as a whole, because chances are you're not going to be looking at a scene, you know, you're going to be holding it, you know. Okay, I'm back. I just got cut off there. The battery on my camera ran out. This is the longest video I've ever done, I realized. And when this battery went out, it was 2 weeks ago, so I haven't gotten around to finishing this card. And one thing you might notice is that the card has kind of faded in terms of its the depth of value and also the saturation of the tone. And I noticed that probably I don't know, maybe about 4 days after I was working on the first part of this video, you know, in terms of the colors and the composition. I don't know, I just haven't gotten around to finishing this up, but I wanted to finish this up, so I'm going to try to get this done today. Now, one of the things, there's a few things with this card. It's first the fading. That will be remedied with some spray sealant, okay? It'll bring back the saturation and depth of the colors, hopefully. And the second thing is I want to mount this into a card format. So a lot of times when I do these in a half-sheet format like this, I kind of reduce it down with my scan if I'm going to make this into an idea card. And idea cards are postcards, and I usually send them out with orders, but what I usually do is I reduce them down to the size of, the postcard size, or a little bit smaller, and I'll do a digital mat on this. But I wanted to make this into an actual card, but I wasn't really thinking about that when I first started out the scene, but this is a half sheet, so I mean I have to have a bigger sheet than a full size if I'm going to fold this in half and put this on a card, because there won't be any kind of opportunity for a mat around this. So that being said, I'm going to have to trim this down a little bit, and I was thinking about putting this, this is kind of a light blue Star Dream. And a lot of times I like to just give this a little border, about like that, on the side. Star Dream paper has a little bit of a kind of a metallic sheen to it. Alright, so I'm going to do something like that. And then I want this black paper to be on the side, so it'll look something like that. Right? And I feel this kind of Star Dream brings out some of the lighter highlights and areas of the card. I don't know, I picked up a big, I don't know, it was probably 50 sheets of the Star Dream something. I have no idea what color it is. I lost the envelope that it came in, or whatever wrapping was on there, but it's really nice. It's really a pale blue. I find that white is almost too stark when I'm doing the matting on these cards. Okay, so I'm just going to eyeball this. I don't want to take off the bottom portion of this. There's too much going on down here with these branches, but I think I could afford to take off a little bit of that. Yeah, it's not my preference to cut this tree off, but for the sake of the mat, I might have to get into that a little bit. I'm just going to eyeball this now, and try to get the same amount up there as down below. This is just a metal ruler. Okay. And with an X-Acto knife, I'll just make a few swipes like this. I don't try to get in one cut. Okay, so that's that. Okay, it still looks okay. And then, okay, now over here I have just too much going on, I think. As far as the composition goes, I can afford to take off some of this side, I think. There's not too much going on over here. Okay. I'll probably take off a little bit more off this side. I mean, I might have to take off more off the top and bottom as well, but we'll see. Okay, I mean, it's not very much right there, it's just a tiny little strip, but let's see how it'll fit. onto the card. Let's see, that's it's barely any border at all. Okay. And then plus, remember, I'm going to fold this in half. It's, well, I don't know. I guess I don't have to have a folded card. It could just be a matted scene. I mean, if this is going to be sent out to someone in a card format, it could be one where you just kind of write on the back and, you know, it doesn't have to open and close. Okay. Maybe in this one I won't. I'll just have a kind of an open, or I don't know, I guess it'd be more of a postcard or something like that. Postcard style, except it just happens to be matted. Okay, let's go about like so. Actually, if I don't have to worry about folding that over, I can just come down here. You know what, I think I'm going to do that. Otherwise, I don't want to chop off too much of the composition. Okay, let's go with something like that. Okay, now, I don't know, there's those little tape runners that would work really well, but I just typically use these little photo stickers. Okay. Those little tape runners would be better, or adhesive, I don't know what they call adhesive runners. They'd probably give better coverage, but I don't know, I just have a ton of these, so these little boxes come with 1,000 of them, so I mean, one box goes a long ways, and they're really, really sticky. Okay. Let's see. With a complete drawing of the surface of this scene, the card with all of that saturation of ink, the card itself, this is a 10-point thickness, single-sided, glossy cardstock, and that's what I'm using on all these scenes, by the way. Point size is the thickness of the paper, and like I said, it's single-sided, glossy. I'll do a paper video one of these days, but okay, let me see if I can get this fairly straight on here. Okay. A little bit off center. I need to move it a little bit right. Okay. Like I said, I usually just eyeball this. Okay, now I have that on there. Now I have to just kind of eyeball this bottom portion, and I'll try to get that fairly straight. Alright, I'm making so many mistakes on this card with that little fingerprint thing. I haven't forgotten the quote up here, it's going to come, but okay, now if that paper right there, that Star Dream was also 11 inches by 8.5, which means that that's not going to fit there without covering up all that black, so I'm going to have to cut this down again. I should have thought of that before. Let's trim this down even more and make it a thinner mat around this, okay? Okay. And just make several swipes like that. Okay. Let's go with this next one over here, so I can keep the thickness consistent. Now, having this little border on here, you know, just kind of the fundamentals of matting it, whatever color your mat is, it kind of brings out those similar colors and or textures within the compositions or photographs or whatever you're matting. So green would have been a good way to go too, or doing like a double matte or something like that would be nice on this, but I didn't have a green that kind of matched some of the greens in here. And I tried some of the colors on here as well, like a purple, but you know, for those little flowers, but it didn't look too good to me, or an orange, so I think without the green I'm just going to stick with this one matte right here, you know, that kind of follows the same color scheme as you know, some of these areas within here, kind of the highlights. Okay, let's see. I think I need to trim that. Now, doing this multiple swipe type of thing, you can get a really thin trim off of here. What you're doing is you're just kind of scoring it and making multiple passes, and you can get as thin a cut as you want, okay? See that little thing? This is like, you know, like a hairline trim of that, just by making multiple passes. You know, have a decent, this is, I mean, this X-Acto blade isn't super sharp, but making those multiple passes kind of will make up for that. Okay. Okay, let's see how this will look right here. Yeah, okay, that looks pretty good, I guess. And we'll do the same thing here. Alright, I'm not forgetting anything, am I? Let's go with the photo stickers. I don't need to go with as many photo stickers on this one, because now that this is mounted on kind of a stiff paper, you know, that wasn't really bowed or anything like that, I don't need to go with as many. We'll go with about 6, 4 corners and kind of the middle. This is kind of a short distance right here, so I probably don't need one there. You know, it's not, I'm not going to put it down, it's not going to have like this bowed kind of area on it. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to decide right now if I want to spray this before or after I lay it down here. I guess maybe it won't matter. But I think I'm trying to think if I want to spray this before we put the quote down. Okay, just try to center it as best you can. That black border kind of will match the, a lot of the black in here in the scene is a little bit gray now, because it kind of faded with all that layers of ink over the top of it, but all those values will come back once we spray it, so I'm not really worried. Okay, now down below, sometimes I give the bottom of the scene a little bit more of a border, just so it's bottom weighted a little bit more than the top for visual weight. Okay, let's see. I had one more cut. I put away my X-Acto knife. Okay. That looks pretty straight to me. Make your first pass, second, third. Kind of when you're doing it this way too, there's less chance of you slipping and, you know, having an accident or something like that too with a sharp knife. Okay. There's the matted scene. I really want to spray this, but let's hold to do that. Okay, now I'm going to get set up here and cut out a few things in preparation for the quote. I'm thinking about putting the quote in the same mat, okay, that Earth Laughs and Flowers, and I'll probably mat that on something. I'll stamp it probably on white, and then let me get the mat prepared though ahead of time so that that won't extend this extremely long video even more. Okay. Okay. As I turned off this video, it occurred to me I wanted to show something too about kind of figuring out the spacing of this quote that we're going to be using. Okay. This is Scenic Sentiment sheet number 4, and these are the cling foam versions. Okay, let's see. Okay, Earth Laughs and Flowers. This is going to go here, alright? So I'm going to have a black mat and then the Star Dream paper. So what I'm going to do is we have to have room for that Star Dream paper and the paper that this is going to be stamped on as well. Okay. So I think up here, this is almost going to make this my leftover piece from kind of down here. It might be a little bit too long, but let's see. We'll make it smaller. I'm not going to have as much of a border around it, but let's see. Kind of figuring out the spacing. It looks like about 7/8 of an inch. Alright, now this one I'm not going to eyeball. I'm going to use my ruler and measure out 7/8, okay? And I put a little mark right there, and I'm going to go 7/8 down this way. Put my mark. Flip this upside down on here. Okay. Now it's really big. Okay. I'm going to take off some space around here so it's not so long. Let's see how much space. Okay, putting that on there, I'm measuring out just by eyeball. It's probably about 1/4 inch. Alright. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5/8. I'm looking right here from the end. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8, okay? Alright. Make your lines. Okay. Okay, so that'll be that. Now, that's going to be a real thin border when I eventually get it on there, okay? But that'll be the kind of the spacing right there. Okay, so I have a couple other things to cut out, and then I'll stamp this out and get it mounted on there. We'll see how it looks. Okay, I've cut my mats and I've mounted them. This is that little Star Dream on a little strip of black. This is the glossy paper that's going to be put right here, and this whole thing is going to be put right in here. Okay, now this is so stark white though, it needs something, doesn't it? as far as tone goes, I think, to kind of match the background. So what I think we're going to do is we'll just put a little bit of a border around this. Let's go on with the Aqua Adirondack Lights color, okay? And let's kind of put a little perimeter on there. Now this is a really thin strip of paper, so there's going to be quite a bit of tone kind of running through the middle, I think. But let's just see how it goes. Okay. Kind of doing the similar thing to this, you know, how it's kind of lighter in the middle and darker around the perimeter. I mean, it's dark, you know, throughout here, but we'll kind of do the same type of thing, I think, so that this element within the greater whole kind of matches that, because, I mean, this little seine is going to be kind of framed and matted off as well as, or just like the larger scenes, so let's use that same kind of compositional vehicle of kind of this little vignette around the quote. And we'll see how it goes. Okay, now that background in here is a little bit green too, and I'm trying to decide if I want to do that or not. I think it needs a little bit more. What do you think? Okay, let's try to get a little bit of this up here. As I tap this, I'm not tapping it like this, so it gives that edge. I kind of have this on like that, so that, you know, that side of it's never really touching the paper. Okay? So I don't have these, you know, edges showing because I'm not really tapping that edge down like that, okay? Not like that. And that was the number 10 light blue. Let's go with the darker blue, which is the number 3 blue. Okay. I'm kind of eyeballing this just to kind of try to somewhat match the scene, but remember the scene is going to get darker just by spraying it. It's going to bring back the depth, hopefully, and the richness of tone and value. Anyways, that's what we have right here. Now, I don't know. I am thinking about that green on there. Let's do that. Let's bring some of that kind of a warmer tone to this quote background. I think it'll just merge and harmonize with the scene a little bit more if it's kind of within that same temperature range within the blues. Okay. Let's see if we can't stamp this out nice and straight. Okay, I've positioned this kind of, I believe, straight along the acrylic block. I thought about stamping this out in green, but I thought that it needed to match in terms of visual weight, you know, other elements within the scene, like these branches and rocks. you know, the heavier kind of trees. Okay. Okay. Let's see if one side looks upside down to me and one side right side up. I don't know, for some reason I want to go this way. Maybe it's because there's more green there or something. Okay. Kind of the camera's like right in my way. I normally go right on top of it, but okay, brand new stamp too. Okay, Earth, Laps, and Flowers. Alright, now, that should be mounted on here. Okay, that looks better, right? With that little border on there. See, instead of just going with the white. I know that's not a new concept or anything for most of you, but if someone's kind of new to stamping. Okay. I don't want to mount this on right now because I know what's going to happen. I'm going to press this down and that's going to smear. So maybe I'll spray that first. Actually, maybe we'll take this all out right now and we'll spray this and see how it looks. One of the things is that, you know, with this quote here, being that it's talking about flowers, I was looking at the scene here and I really liked just how the scene was kind of coming along with this kind of abundance of little floral flourishes here with these pens. You know, I thought I'd really want to go kind of to the extreme here. You know, because I really want this to be about, when you have a quote like that, you really want to emphasize whatever's in that quote, you know, to make it appropriate for the scene. So you want to leave no mistake. You know, if Earth's laughing in flowers, it's plural. I mean, you really want to emphasize that quote. In another way, you can say that if I was doing the scene and wasn't even thinking about that quote, but I added it in there, that, you know, the quote itself would emphasize the flowers, so it kind of brings your attention back into it, like that, and it's kind of telling the viewer what to, I don't know, what to look for within a given composition. Now, after I spray this, I might be able to add some more of these in, but it's kind of sealed off a little bit, so sometimes when you're adding these little flourishes, it's kind of, sometimes it's better to do it. It depends on how thick of a coat of that spray sealant you apply, as to how easy, because, you know, if it's really thick and you're trying to apply some of these little dots, sometimes it doesn't stick as well as on kind of a bare piece of paper. Okay, oops. Let's get that back in the field of view. Okay. I want it to really sparkle and kind of glisten, you know, on this landscape. I want these things to really pop. So sometimes instead of a little dot, what I'm doing is I'm kind of drawing this larger circle here. Okay. Oops. if you first start applying some of these little dots like this, in one little area, it looks strange, you know, because that texture and that degree of highlighting is only in one area. But, you know, when you put it all over the scene, I mean, this is an extreme version, but it kind of just harmonizes, and it makes better sense. Okay, well, now that I've been doing that, maybe I can put this down. I'd like to get all that out of the way before I spray this. I'll take this video outside and you can see how the saturations hopefully return, and the depth to that layering of ink. Now another thing is, sometimes if your scenes get kind of dull like that, you know, and they fade out a little bit, what you can do is you can go back to your lightest colors, like a Adirondack Lights, Aqua, you know, which I used on there, and you can just take a clean stylus tool, ink it down, and kind of reapply that all over, you know, wherever you've added it the first time. And that'll kind of moisten the inks again and kind of bring back the vibrancy. But, you know, what you can do is you can spray it while wet and not lose that the depth and saturation. I don't know if spraying kind of a scene that's already faded out a little bit brings back everything as if you know, similar to as if you sprayed it while it was wet. Sometimes I think if you spray it while it's wet, it retains everything, but, you know, it's always kind of hard to tell if it all comes back after the fact, you know, after it's already kind of faded out a little bit. But I don't know, but I don't know, I have a whole video on that where that happened, and I don't know, it looked pretty saturated to me, you know, when we went back and sprayed all those scenes. So I didn't feel like it was lacking anything. But again, it's the great equalizer, you know, when it comes to different ink and paper combinations. You never know how they're really going to act. Paper formulas keep changing too, I think. Okay, let's see where this will go. Move it around a little bit. Do I want to overlap the hill a little bit more? Going like down. So if I have it in the sky, kind of, it seems like it might be kind of about the sky, but if I kind of bring this down a little bit and just have that corner touching the down in there, maybe that will look better. I think I will. I think I'll have it just kissing the hillside a little bit. Alright, that looks pretty good. Now, initially, I was just going to stamp that quote right in the sky there. The sky wouldn't have been that dark, though, okay? I kind of darkened it up with that little blunder of mine, but that probably looks better, but that, I don't know, it took like, I don't know, 10 extra minutes, and I'm kind of lazy, so normally I wouldn't do something like that, but, okay. Let's see. Alright, this scene took a long time. I'm going to sign it down here. I don't know, I'm kind of doing that for compositional reasons too. This quote here kind of gives a visual weight, and it kind of starts leaning this way a little bit, you know, plus it's sloping that way. Sometimes if I have a little bit of a writing on this side too. Okay. Alright, let's take this outside and spray it and see how that looks. Okay, we're outside, and I'm going to spray this scene to try and bring back some of the depth and saturation of the original kind of wet inks look. I'm going to spray it with the Krylon UV resistant clear. If you've watched the spray sealant video, you'll know that I have several different types. I ran out of my Ace Hardware one, which is my favorite, recommended by Ken Pesho. That works fantastic, so I'm just using the next one in line, I guess. Okay, see that top part really, saturation really coming back. I hope this is capturing this on video. As far as the saturation's returning, okay, you can see the big difference between there and here. Sometimes this is not only just returning the original depth and saturation to a dried scene, but sometimes the depth becomes even more apparent, I guess, maybe even more so than even just the wet ink look. Okay. Alright. Let's see. The Ace Hardware spray sealant dries much faster than this one, which is really great. But anyway, that looks pretty good to me. You always want to spray this outside so it doesn't get all those fumes in your house or whatever area you're stamping in. You don't want to breathe the fumes too much. Okay. Okay, we're back in from outside, and I can see better the end result as far as how deep the saturations are again. Okay, so this is it's going to tell me, or give me a better indication of where I might want some additional little highlights and details. For example, there's a lot of detail right in here, but there's not a lot of highlights, you know what I mean? It's kind of the same value, so I might want to have a couple areas in here kind of pop out a little bit more, and that's where these white highlights will come in. Kind of represents some kind of little white wildflower, perhaps pearly everlasting or something like that. Okay, highlights back here. Kind of put a few little highlights down here around the trees. Kind of come in contact with the grasses. I don't know, these white highlights could also be represent like seeds from the grasses. I mean, you can see how shiny this paper got too with that spray sealant. That was a UV spray, but you know, I mean, I wouldn't put something like this. I wouldn't trust it to be out in sunlight or on, you know, like a refrigerator or something like that. And think it wasn't going to fade. I think it will fade. Maybe that UV spray does a little bit of something, but you know, these dye-based inks are very bright, and I think it would. I think they would fade. So if there's ever, you know, you ever do a scene or something like that, and if you really want it to last a long time, then what I always say is scan it or photograph it and make a print of it, and then put that on display. You can get some pretty good reproductions that way. These days with scanning, and scanners are very, very inexpensive these days compared to what they used to run. Okay. Alright, so let's take a close-up look here and see what that spray did and what these little highlights are doing. Okay. I like those gel pens, but on this one, you know, those little gel pen highlights really do the trick, don't they? Okay, you can see it right in there, right around those trees. It kind of just makes that area a little bit more exciting. And even back in here in the distance, you know, those little specks of color like that. And again, those are Uniball gel pens. Okay. Something down here in the water. And this scene alone would be okay, I think. But, you know, really having that little quote there really adds to the overall composition, I would say, in this scene. I don't know. I need to use those quotes a little bit more often, I think, because I really like how this scene came out, and I like that up there. But anyways, in recap, don't apply inks with your applicator and do a smash thing right on your scene, you know. And if you do, especially after all that compositional work that I did, there's always something you can do. You know, you can put a tree in front of it or something like that. In this case, I just put that quote up there, and it covered it right up. I mean, I couldn't see it anyways because I filled it in there with clouds and things like that, but I don't know, at no point in time in any of my scenes, and there's been plenty of them where I thought, you know, during the process, including a lot of these videos here, where I thought, you know, it's kind of not going in the direction that I kind of anticipated or wanted, but you can always take it in a different direction, add something here or there, you know, changing the composition around or changing the color schemes, adding something, you know, doing a variation of your initial intention. You know, I was going to just stamp that out, Earth, Laughs, and Flowers, right onto the scene itself and save myself some time. That looks pretty good to me, and I don't know, just keep working with it. Usually by the time I get around to the gel pens, and I also like the white pigment inks in my scenes, just those two kind of finishing details always seems to bring a scene around. And of course the matting always helps. I don't always do that, but whenever I do, I think that matte can really add a great deal to it. And last but not least, the spray sealant. I mean, this is really, you know, beautiful and glossy now, and those colors are really popping, okay? And that detail can really, or not detail, but process can just bring out just some beautiful, beautiful saturations in your ink, okay? And all of the work that you put into layering. And it's the, kind of like I always say, it's kind of the equalizer when it comes to all of the different ink and paper combinations that you can have. Just by spraying it, you don't have to have the perfect paper or something like that. That being said, there are certain papers, I'm not saying that, you know, it'll work with everything, but inkjet papers, laser print papers, kind of home printer papers tend to not work as good as the kind of the more professional offset papers. And by saying that, that's what most of the papers are out there in the stamping industry, that they're, you know, at your local stamp store they would provide to you. It's not some kind of paper that you would just buy in a pack, you know, from a office supply store or something like that. It's the papers that would be used in the printing industry for things like postcards and covers. Okay? Anyways, thanks so much for watching this video, and hope you enjoyed it.